Welcome back, everyone. Again, I'm David Hamilton, founder and chairman of the America's Future Series, and I am thrilled to be with Jason Rathje today. Jason has joined us in the past. He's always interesting. They're doing some exciting work. And just today, you all announced your OSC strategy, right? So this is a big day, and we're going to hear a lot about that. But if you would, I'd really like just to start by having you tell people a little bit of what the OSC is, et cetera, just at a very high level, and then maybe share us a little bit in your own words, your new investment strategy that you've just released.
Well, David, thank you again for having us back. Big day for us, as you said. We just released the first ever investment strategy for the Office of Strategic Capital. We were established back in December of 2022 with the mission to attract and scale private capital for national security. And when we were established, the secretary really gave us two initial mandates. One, establish our governance and oversight board, the Strategic Capital Advisory Council, to help ensure that our mission, our strategies, our programs aligned and supported the Department of Defense and the DoD's priorities. And then the second thing he asked us to do was go identify and prioritize critical technology areas for investment. And that's what's really encapsulated in this investment strategy, which goes over the why, how, and the what for OSC. Why, today we're in a technology competition, global technology competition for critical and emerging technologies. And in that competition, private capital is the dominant source of funding.
It's the lifeblood.
It's the lifeblood, and today the United States has the largest and most liquid capital markets in the world. It really is a national advantage for us in this technology competition. The issue is that many of those technologies in our critical technology areas still struggle to receive the capital they need to scale. And this is especially true in the critical technologies that are mostly hardware-enabled industries, right? The physical industries that require significant investment over a long period of time. Those technology areas are fairly expensive from a capital markets perspective. And so what the Office of Strategic Capital is doing, our strategy is to use new financial tools like loans and loan guarantees to lower the cost of capital, to increase investment in areas that we think are priorities for the Department for National Security. And that's the what. What are we doing today? Today, we have a program activity in the Small Business Investment Companies Critical Technologies Initiative. It's a very long-winded acronym, SBIC-CT.
But it says what it does.
But it says what it does. We're a very straightforward organization, right? It's a partnership with the SBA where we can provide government-backed loans to private investors who use and match those government-backed loans with their own private capital if those investors are willing to make investments in areas that we think are priorities to national security. And then we list 12 areas in our investment strategy that we think are really the most important areas for OSC tools to make sure we can catalyze capital investment and ensure that these companies, often developing technologies on the back of taxpayer grants and contracts, have the opportunity to scale, produce, manufacture those technologies in a way that both the Department of Defense and the broader commercial markets can use those technologies to continue economic growth.
So there are a lot of roadblocks and challenges along the way that your office is trying to deal with and help these small non-traditionals, et cetera, and even some of the bigger companies deal with, right? So maybe you could talk about what some of those roadblocks are and how you're helping work to help them overcome that, and so that they can do what you're saying, which is actually scale, get contracts, produce. What are some of those big roadblocks for these small companies?
You'll see a lot of work happening in the Department of Defense with this focus on scale, right? Production, manufacturing, infrastructure investments. Those investments are really important for government partnerships because in many of these areas, you need strategic public investments to crowd in and accelerate capital investment in these crucial industries. And what we see with many of the companies that we work with in the S&T side of the house, to doing research and development, making advancements in carbon nanotubes or semiconductors, get to the point where they've demonstrated a technology at the prototype stage, but they struggle to raise capital in the private markets. And the reason why is because they're just very expensive investments for private investors to make, right?
So they're both expensive, and an investor wants to know that you have a customer that is going to buy a bunch from you and that they're ready to actually acquire
And I think many of these areas actually that OSC is focused on are critical component technologies. We have a number of programs inside of the Department of Defense that are looking to accelerate the transition of commercial technologies into supporting warfighter needs, right? The Defense Innovation Unit, the innovation organizations inside of the services are great examples of these types of organizations. Where OSC is really focused is actually in the industrial base, right? We're looking at the critical components that comprise not only our defense needs. We talk about this concept of transition often, but nobody says, hey, I'm going to transition semiconductors into the hands of our airmen, soldiers, sailors, Marines, and Guardians. But absolutely everything that they do from a high technology, high-end competition perspective relies on semiconductors. And we have a significant part of our science and technology budget dedicated to research and development in many of these technology areas. But in order to actually scale those prototypes into products that can be both absorbed in our supply chains to support defense needs, but also be used by broader industry to help ensure that we are staying at the cutting edge of technology, that we're using these as engines of both national economic security, allows us to make sure that when we're making investments, we're looking into ways where we can lower the cost for private investors to invest in areas they otherwise wouldn't invest in. But the companies that they're investing in, the companies that are receiving the capital, still have to have growth objectives. They still need to be able to sell products in order to pay back those investments.
Okay. So you're very complementary with the other innovation organizations, et cetera, but there's some significant differences. And I think people may not be fully aware of how you're complementary, but still different than DIU, AFWorks, and all the other groups. So maybe you could highlight a little bit of how you're a little different from them.
No, it's many of the founding team at OSC, still a relatively new organization within the DoD, came from these types of organizations, right? And I spent a long time at AFWorks. Many of the other folks that were brought in to help stand this up came from DIU or Naval X, or the Army Applications Laboratory. And so we have a lot of experience in the innovation ecosystem, which has really helped us to learn how to work with non-traditionals, right? Whether that's companies or investors, new categories that we're bringing into the fold of the department, into the fold of national security, to increase the pace of innovation, the pace of technology. You want to increase competition. You want to really expand the tent, which has been great to see. The core difference, though, with us is really through a combination of three things. First, we focus on lending, not spending. OSC tools require repayment. It's a very new approach for the Department of Defense, but it's not new in the federal government, right? There's been a significant amount of activity in the lending space over many decades, or I like to say we've been lending longer than we've had an actual DoD in the United States.
Okay.
Whether that's the CHIPS and Science Act and the Department of Commerce standing up a loan program recently, organizations like the Export-Import Bank or the Development Finance Corporation or the DOE's loan program, which have been doing this for decades or longer. We've had the opportunity to work with many of these organizations and understand that these are really incredible tools to help get after the problem sets that we're looking at specifically, right? Making loans to build infrastructure and manufacturing, for example. Commercial lending is a practice that we have and have been doing in this country for quite some time. And now the Department of Defense looks at applying it across a wide range of technology areas. Unfortunately, or maybe, fortunately, depending on who you are, we don't have a Department of Advanced Materials. We don't have a Department of Biotech. We don't have a department of many of these critical technology areas. And so if the Department of Defense isn't doing it, who is actually providing the capital to ensure that these industries can scale and grow to support the huge capabilities the Department of Defense needs, but our broader industrial base? And that's where the Department of Defense has really been able to build this office around and grow these types of tools to make sure that we can build the things and manufacture the things that we are really going to help lead national security in the future.
And so what you're doing is very exciting, and I guess there's the question of cost, benefit, ROI. I mean, and maybe you could share with the audience a little bit about the cost to the taxpayer, what's been involved in setting this up, et cetera, and then where you're at, maybe how close you are to making loans, how many loans have been made, or so what does the near future look like and its ROI?
No, it is really interesting how these lending programs work. And in our investment strategy, we talk a bit about the kind of financial calculus, right? What is the cost to the taxpayer, for example, for a loan, as opposed to spending? And, you know, spending is 100% cost to the taxpayer. We spend the dollar, right? But with a loan, it's a small fraction of that. You know, the average commercial lending cost to taxpayers closer to 1%. So for every dollar lent, we're looking at a penny spent. And so it's a much more efficient way if it can be
Much more
used,
leveraged.
much more leveraged way. And then, you know, with the SBIC program that we have in coordination with the SBA, that loan is then matched with private capital. So there's another multiplying effect. So at the end of the day, for pennies on the dollar, we can have a massive impact on providing capital to
And it's not
areas
just
of
given away.
industries. No, there's an expected return, right? That's why we can do it. You know, these loan programs have been growing in recent years because they are this incredible tool to achieve. In our case, will it be used to achieve national security objectives without actually costing the taxpayers a significant amount of money, and they can be used though only in certain areas. Going back to your early statement, they really have to be used in areas where we expect the commercial markets, commercial buyers to be able to repay loans.
People don't get loans unless the lender believes that there's a potential payback.
You know, but you talk about dual use, right? The Dual Use Technology Summit. Dual use is a very promising area for the Department of National Security because there's more than one buyer.
Yes.
Right. And so that it opens up the aperture for competition, but it also lowers the cost and development for the taxpayer. I mean, a lot of the stuff we did at AFWorks when we were working on that many years ago, where it was focused on that concept. Hey, how do we expand competition at a reduced cost by bringing other sources of dollars into the mix, whether that's other buyers or other investors? In OSC's case, we're very much focused on the investors. And we can use these tools to do that, to attract capital into areas that otherwise wouldn't be able to receive it, but do it at a relatively low cost, both to us and lower in cost to the investors and the companies that are going to receive the capital. Now, we, as of maybe almost 3 months ago, have now received organic authorities in the Department of Defense to be able to execute loans and loan guarantees, which is we're I think the 132nd federal credit program in the country, which is really exciting for us, but we're the first one really within the Department of Defense. But we've been able to work with incredible partners like the SBA. And so our SBIC program that we have, the Critical Technologies Initiative, is a program that the SBA operates, right? They've been operating it continuously since 1958.
So they know how to do this.
They know how to do it. They've been doing it very well. They've been incredible partners with us. When the office was established in early December of 2022, the secretary a few days later sat down with the administrator from the SBA and signed a letter of intent to do this program together. So right out the gate, we were working on not only trying to identify areas, but working on a program to increase investment in those areas that today investors can go apply to be a part of. And that program was launched in December of 2022. We started taking initial applications back in September of last year, and we're very close to licensing our first funds through that process. And so we've been really incredibly grateful and honored to be working with the SBA on this initiative, which has been a revolutionary new initiative for the Department of Defense, and they've been incredible partners through this process.
So you've touched on some of the things I was going to ask about, like the SBA. How does a non-traditional, non-standard company engage with you all? How does maybe one of the mid-size or bigger ones do this similarly? And how do investors and the points of contact, how that you interface is through the SBA and maybe other programs? How does someone connect with the OSC in order to take advantage of how you can support their efforts?
Well, you can always go to our website to connect with us. You just Google OSC, or you can go to www.cto.mil/OSC, and that will identify what programs are open today and for who.
Okay, great.
So today, the SBIC Critical Technologies Initiative is the only program that we have operational. It's available today for investors to go apply. Now, what that program does is it has a licensing process by which funds will be evaluated for their applicability to investing in our critical technology areas. The process itself results in an investment, a licensed investment fund, if it's successful, and that licensed investment fund may be eligible for these government-backed loans. The fund must bring their own private capital to the table.
So they bring some of their own money.
They have to, because these are not government loans to investors in and of themselves. They are matching to private capital dollars. And that's the whole, going back to our mission, to attract and scale private capital.
That's the benefit. I mean, I'm an investor. I can invest in anything I want to. Great. But you're providing an opportunity for them to find these technologies that there's a need for. Secondly, you're giving them some advantage, some financial advantage, because they're matching funds, right?
We are lowering the cost of capital, right? At the end of the day, we are leveraging private investment dollars to increase investment in areas that are being underinvested today.
So why would I go it alone?
So there's an incredible opportunity, not even just to go it alone, but to say, hey, maybe I should start looking at these companies.
I wouldn't go alone. I would say, hey, why wouldn't I partner with the government? Why wouldn't I partner with the OSC? Why wouldn't I work with the SBA? Why wouldn't I leverage and have a lower cost of capital?
Absolutely.
And I'm trying to understand the downside.
No, I think the key thing for us is today industries, the software-based industries, the predominant source of investment for the capital markets, right?
Make once, print many is
because there's lower technology risk, there's more comparable firms to evaluate what investments that you're making. You can diligence companies better because you know more of them. You invest in a lot of these companies, so you know the minutia, right? There's not a ton of investments going into carbon nanotube technology today, right? There's not a ton of investments going into, biochemicals today. Semiconductors is another great example, right? There's not a lot of semiconductor startups in the ecosystem today. And now,
because the capital intensive.
It's going to take 5 to 8 times more investment in a Series A for a semiconductor company than it does for a fintech company. So that is what we're really focused on with OSC. It's we're battling the choice, to your point, to not invest. And we've got these incredible capital markets. We have a funding that's investing into companies. Why not invest in companies that are developing these technologies that are critical to national security?
Absolutely. So we've talked a little about how your partners can partner with you. Are there some unknown things that you wish people knew? I mean, if there's a few things that you could share with the public and you really wanted the public to understand, that maybe people don't understand about the OSC that they need to know, that you want to get the word out on?
Well, I think you really hit the nail on the head when we were talking about what opportunity this was for investors today. It was that we can provide guaranteed loans to increase investment in the areas that we think are important to national security. So if you're an investor who's interested in investing in these areas, right, it's a great opportunity to come check us out to see if this is of interest, so that we can partner on ensuring that we have the companies that are developing technologies in this space have access to the capital they need to scale and grow. The next round of applications for that program ends at the end of the month, March 31st.
People need to know that.
But these are rolling applications. We do them quarterly. So we'll do the next one in June. And the opportunity exists today. So we are working. You can go fill out an intake form and jump into the process. We are also ramping up our staff, which is really exciting. We don't talk about that in the investment strategy, but we are hiring today, which is great. We're bringing on incredible expertise. One of the rare opportunities we have now with OSC is to build this brand new office that does something that the department does not historically do, which is lend money, and do it in a way where we can bring expertise in from other federal credit programs and from the private sector and bring them together to build this brand new organization that has an incredibly important mission today. So if you're interested in joining with the team, we advise you to come check us out. We have positions open, and invite you to come work with us either as a fund or as a member of the team, which is a really
So I'm curious what capabilities you're looking for. Clearly, someone who understands lending, finance, et cetera, that's going to be a skill set that you'll care about. People who understand advanced technologies, et cetera, right? People who understand perhaps the procurement process or understand the DoD. What are the core skill sets or capabilities that, make somebody valued by the OSC?
It's a diverse set of backgrounds and skill sets, which is a really exciting team to work with, right? Because you have these incredible individuals who have amazing strengths, unique strengths, whether that's in the technology ecosystem, whether that's on the government procurement side, whether that's on the investment side. And I think you just listed basically all of the initial folks that we brought into the team that have those.
I would expect you to want those kinds of people.
Experience, which is fantastic. Right now, we are looking for folks that have really one of three primary areas of background. One is in government operations, procurement, finance, contracting. One is in government policy. The investment strategy itself includes a number of new ways of assessing what we mean by national security. So we look at areas, for example, the priority areas that we list are areas that have some unique IP advantage. Hey, we are leading in S&T in many of these areas, but we are struggling to commercialize many of these areas. And then we assess capital flows. We're now assessing availability of private capital to invest in the areas where we are trying to scale from prototype into production, and where we see a limited amount of available capital at the levels of patience, means time, and the levels of amount, meaning cost, that are required to actually scale these into production, insufficient to leap over that hurdle. That's what we are prioritizing in the strategy, which means that we're looking for people who have a demonstrated experience understanding capital markets, right? That understand the technology landscape, can do great work in the policy arena. And then the last thing, we're also looking at government lenders, right? And private sector lenders, folks who have done this work, that are working to assess companies' readiness,
their
viability,
their ability
to repay a loan, right? And it's been great to bring that level of expertise back into the Department of Defense. I mean, I'm learning every day from the team on how they think about this work. And in FY24, that's where we plan to continue to grow the organization, right? To build out the next program activity and the next program activity above and beyond the SBIC program, to continue to work with companies where they're at in their stage of growth, whether that's, in this case, working with private capital providers to increase more early stage investment, or in the future, working with later stage companies to help build manufacturing and infrastructure, to do project financing, to help actually establish early stage industrial bases that are required to catalyze these technologies into components that can be integrated into both defense and non-defense systems.
Do you all ever play some sort of role where, let's say you have a small, non-traditional, non-standard, they need money, you've evaluated them, looks like they're a good play, they can solve one of the problems that we're focused on around one of these critical technologies, and perhaps they should be partnering with a larger established firm, that has more reach, more money already, et cetera. Is there any sort of play in that? Because I would think if I'm a small company and I get money from you guys, then the big boys are going to be more interested in me, and maybe that's going to further leverage the capability of a smaller company.
It's actually a really exciting set of tools, because the SBIC program, for example, we come in and work with the limited partnership in a fund, which means we go work with limited partners, whether that's endowments or pensions or large corporates, to help drive capital in to invest in the smaller players in the industrial base. Now, what that does is it allows us to work with big companies to make sure that combined with the SBA and the Department of Defense, we are increasing investment in the growth of the small businesses, which is a very unique aspect. So while the companies continue to grow from small to medium-sized businesses, the return back to the taxpayer is great, because the money comes back into the treasury. And then the capital providers and the companies that work with us can continuously generate profits through the growth of today, what is the consolidating industrial base. But through the growth of the industrial base, it creates a win-win situation at limited no cost to the taxpayer.
Well, this is a fantastic conversation. I know we could probably do another 30 minutes or so, but I really appreciate your time today. Folks, if you want to connect with the OSC, please do, as Jason said, go to their website, see what's available, where they're at, and they're going to continue to roll out these capabilities and these initiatives. So I really appreciate what you're doing for our nation, and this is really important stuff. Thank you for doing it.
Thanks for having us, David.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We're going to be back in a few minutes with our next guest, our next panel. Have a little break, and we'll be right back.